broadcaster Jim Robson. His notes and memories in a unique book titled Hockey Play-by-Play, Around the NHL with Jim Robson. The author, Jason Ferris.
Having now spent so much time with Jim and learned about his process and knowing that he really came up broadcasting games all on his own without color and without obviously the technological aids. So it was a necessity. It was really a lifeline for him to have those notes so he could do their game recaps and also just during the game be able to relate to them. So I think once you start to understand how that fits into his broadcasting process, it's quite interesting. And yeah, it's quite surprising. I mean, the level of detail in the notes is very high. And actually what we do in the very beginning of the book is take Game 7 against the Rangers in '94. And then we have a double-page spread with those game notes, and they're all annotated. So we sort of circle the interesting things and explain, his unique notations and some of his shorthand, so that people can use that really as a legend for how they can interpret the notes that are on the subsequent pages. So it's really quite interesting, and it becomes a bit of an exploration exercise for people that get to read the book, because when you start looking through it, you really can find interesting and quirky things, everything from the weather to who the intermission guests were in the broadcast to some of the advertising sponsors, and that really does help bring a lot of the memories back for people that watch the games.
I'm glad that we featured the first NHL game I ever broadcast, which was not a Vancouver Canuck game. It was the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Oakland Seals in Oakland in March of 1970. This was before the Canucks came in the NHL. And I think I was being tested, or it was like an audition for the people who ran Hockey Night in Canada, and they also controlled the Leaf broadcast. So Foster Hewitt, who was doing the Leaf radio at that time, didn't go all the way to Oakland for what was a meaningless game in the standings. Instead, they asked me to come down from Vancouver to do that game. And it was the night that the Leafs traded Tim Horton to the New York Rangers. So that's the feature in the book. But my invoice is in the book. I got $125 to do that game. And my press pass is in that book. The program from that game is in the book, and the cover features Mike Lawton, who's from Nelson, BC, and he was playing for the Seals. And there are a couple of telegrams from people in Vancouver. There's one from Greg Douglas and Joe Crozier. So that's a page that I like to look on.
The first reaction I've been getting is certainly one of, love the book, it looks great. I've set aside 4 hours on Boxing Day to read it cover to cover, which I don't think is possible. But I think people really have sort of said, this is a book I want to spend a lot of time with, and something I can keep coming back to, and read a game about Minnesota, and then put that down and come back and spend an hour with the Canadiens in Montreal or something like that. So I think it's a book that over the next couple of weeks and months we're really going to start to get reaction from. But it is a different book. I think it's something that hockey fans will really love, because it really does show the evolution of the league over 35 years, and it shows a completely different angle about the game from the broadcast booth.
Now, this self-published book with proceeds going to Canuck Place can be purchased at the following locations.
Canucks This Week continues now with a great gift idea for the hockey fan and historian. The author, Jason Ferris, the book, Hockey Play-by-Play, Around the NHL with Jim Robson.
Well, I'd heard about Jim's notes in an article about 10 years ago, and always thought that was an interesting sort of slant on history and on NHL history. And figured that there's sort of some artistry involved in those notes, and thought that would visually be a compelling way to tell some of the history. And so when I finally got a chance to see them, indeed there's lots of rich history and information there, and so it did provide a lot of interest. And then we just started piecing together other memorabilia and whatnot, and it really became a beautiful scrapbook, I think, of NHL history.
Hurry up to Ronning. Ronning over the line. Passes it. Adams scores! Greg Adams has just won it in the last minute of the first overtime.
I grew up listening to this voice, as everybody did in the Lower Mainland and across Canada for that matter. So for me, trying to do honor to the work that he did over those years and also bring back the notes that I think really represent the professionalism that he brought to the job, I think gives fans a sort of a new angle on what was really going on behind the scenes, and also gives everybody a chance to kind of relive a lot of great memories and a lot of great calls that Jim had.
Dale Talon rushing at center, trying to go over that line, slowed by McKinney, still has the puck, he shoots, he scores!
My initial reaction was a phone call from Cesar Maniego, who had been talking to Jason about doing a book on goaltending, because Jason played goal badly in low minors in the North Shore. And anyway, I told Cesar that no, I wasn't interested in doing a book. And he said, well, he's got a pretty good idea, so maybe you should talk to him about it. So then Jason called me and came to our house and gave me some indication of what his format would be. And I said, well, I'll talk it over with my wife and family and see what they think. And my wife thought it was a good idea to preserve my game notes. That was sort of the key, because I had these boxes of stuff in the garage that wasn't going to be used and probably would end up in a dumpster or something. And Jason asked me to pick out about 5 games in each city that it would be possible to feature in the book. When he told me the concept is to have a 2-page feature on every city that we did a broadcast in.
You know, this book has a very regional interest and a very, niche market. So we felt that we could reach that market, and so it made sense to self-publish it. The other thing is, there's a charitable angle to this with Canuck Place, and we felt strongly about that right from the outset. And also just visually, I really wanted it to look a certain way, and that costs a lot of money. So the mainstream publishers probably weren't so keen on it, and the hockey lockout at the time as well really put a kibosh on any new hockey book. So all those factors kind of came together, and we just said, well, we're just going to push on and do the book that we want and do it the way we want to do it, and hopefully, like-minded fans will enjoy it, and I think that's been the case.
Looks like a great read, and this is where you can get a copy of this self-published book with partial proceeds going to Canuck Place.